Launching a startup is risky and often heartbreaking. In the US, the capital of entrepreneurship, roughly 90% of startups ultimately fail, with about 10% not surviving their first year and around 70% collapsing by year 5. Even among venture-backed companies, 3 out of 4 startups never return a profit. This high failure rate means many founders pour their lives and savings into ventures that don't pan out. The psychological toll on entrepreneurs is severe. Founders face long hours, chronic stress, and immense pressure to hustle. Surveys indicate 57% of US small business owners feel highly stressed, and 45% report increased anxiety levels while running their companies. Unlike most people, entrepreneurs often hide their struggles. In one snapshot, 81% of startup founders admitted that they weren't open about stress or mental health issues. Unfortunately, the rates of burnout, depression, and even serious mental illness are higher in this group. A landmark study by University of California researchers found that 49% of entrepreneurs have experienced a mental health condition in their lifetime, with 30% reporting history of depression, which is approximately double the rate of the general population. Anxiety and ADHD are also elevated. In fact, entrepreneurs were more than twice as likely to suffer from suicidal ideation or attempts compared to others in one study. They are also over 2 times more likely to actually commit suicide or require psychiatric hospitalization than in general public. The outcome is that behind the celebratory culture of startups, many founders quietly bottle crippling stress, insomnia, and despair. This intense strain doesn't just affect founders, it can destroy their lives. Maintaining relationships under startup pressure is extremely difficult. Estimates suggest entrepreneurs have a divorce rate around 43 to 48%, which is on par with or higher than average. The all-consuming nature of a new business often means family time, self-care, and balance are sacrificed. One 2024 survey even found that 1 in 20 business owners had to shut down their company due to the financial strain of a divorce. Among entrepreneurs going through divorce, 60% reported a decline in mental well-being and motivation. 57% said their business suffered financially, and 70% struggled to focus on work during the ordeal. In short, the startup grind can shatter marriages and families. As an article bluntly put it, launching a business can shatter the founder's marriage. Founders themselves have linked their business to kind of infidelity, an obsession that pulls them away from their spouses and kids. For example, Elon Musk, the billionaire behind Tesla and SpaceX, has been divorced twice in the span of his entrepreneurial career. And he has admitted that he never took a vacation during critical startup years. These cases underscore that the human cost of startup success is very real. The statistics above come to life in the tragic and cautionary stories of individual entrepreneurs who push themselves past the breaking point without building a support system. Jody Sherman, an ecom founder. He was a passionate founder who raised millions for his eco-friendly e-commerce startup, but he took on enormous burden and kept pushing forward even as the company ran into trouble. In January 2013, at age 43, Sherman died by suicide, a devastating shock to the startup community. In the aftermath, his company's board discovered Ecom was in dire straits financially. Just weeks after his death, it had to shut its doors. It had burned through the cash, liabilities exceeded assets, and no one left at the company even knew where all the money had gone. In other words, Jody had been carrying the load almost single-handedly. The pressure and isolation of trying to do it all became overwhelming. His story tragically illustrates the dark side of founders' burnout. An innovator driven to suicide and a startup that collapsed because all the knowledge and responsibility rested on one person's shoulders. Another example is Tim Eskew, corporate range CEO. Tim's experience shows how a relentless workload can slowly erode one's personal life. He ran a sales outsourcing company and was so consumed by work that he was never truly present with his family. At the dinner table, his young daughter would say, "Daddy, you have your business face on. I can't talk to you when you are like that." Because SQ was physically there, but mentally still at work, with his mind never stopping whirling over business problems. He traveled constantly, refused to take vacations, and even on rare family trips, he was glued to his phone instead of spending time with his wife and child. Major life decisions were made unilaterally for the business, with little family input. Over time, the strain became unbearable for his family. After 16 years of marriage, Askew's wife filed for divorce. The breakup coincided with the growing success of his company, a bitter irony that he recognizes. By his own admission, the startup had become so all-consuming that he didn't leave time for his private life. Tim's story shows a silver lining, but it's a sobering example of how an entrepreneur's dream can turn into a personal nightmare. Excessive workload without delegation or boundaries led to burnout and a broken home. These stories are extreme but very real examples of what happens when entrepreneurs try to shoulder everything alone, when founders in the only thing propping up a business, working 80 hours weeks, making every decision and never unplugging, both the venture and the individual are at risk of collapse. The get it shit done ethos of doing whatever it takes can drive short-term progress, but as we see, it can also drive people into anxiety, depression, and exhaustion. The second major issue is structural. A business built entirely around the one overworked founder is a house of cards. In the world of business strategy, this is known as key man risk. This term refers to the over-reliance on a single individual whose absence would devastate the company. In many startups, knowledge, skills, and critical relationships are connected in the founder's hands. If that key person bursts out, steps away, or even gets hit by a bus, the company is left paralyzed. As one advisor put it, key man risk can sink you. Is considered one of the hardest risks to mitigate because you can insure against many business perils, but losing the one person who does it all is difficult to recover from. Research on larger companies backs this up. When a Fortune 500 CEO unexpectedly left, the company's stock underperformed the market by 11% on average in the following year. In smaller firms, the impact is even more dire. Often outright failure if the founder leader exists. Key person risk is essentially a single point of failure, a problem in an organization. But why does this risk arise in the first place? Ironically, it stems from the same get shit done mentality that helps launch startups. In the early days, founders bear every head and micromanage every detail to survive. This hands-on hustle is often necessary really, just to get a product off the ground. However, what makes you successful in the beginning can cause your downfall later. Experts call this the founder's mode trap. The founder remains a control freak of habit, unable to shift style as the company grows. A recent analysis of 122 startups found that 58% of founders were poor at delegating. More than half of entrepreneurs essentially bottleneck their own company's growth. This tendency to hold all the reins is described as a fatal flaw in leadership that sabotages the business ability. In other words, many founders never evolve past being the to-do-it-all person, and that becomes the Achillean heel. One entrepreneurship coach noted that the micromanagement feeds the ego. It makes a founder feel indispensable, but it's an illusion and ultimately a recipe for burnout and team frustration. Over time, top employees will flee a company where the founder doesn't trust anyone else to make decisions. Innovation and morale both suffer in that environment. That I'm the business cultures, sometimes literally emblazoned on startup office walls as get shit done, must change as the company matures. The very slogan that have motivated a small team to move mountains can create a toxic, unsustainable culture if not tempered. There comes a point where a startup needs transition from heroic individual efforts to reliable systems and teams. If a founder fails to make this transition, the key man risk becomes deadly. We have seen case studies of this dynamic. For example, BlackBerry's downfall in the smartphone market is partly attributed to leadership's reluctance to delegate and adapt. The founders kept tight control and were slow to respond to iPhone and Android competitions. Another case was Enjoy, an early e-cigarette startup that initially succeeded but then crashed because the founder refused to delegate or heed feedback. Insider says his unwillingness to let others share responsibility led to poor decisions, lack of motivation, and the company's downfall. These cautionary tales show that clinging to hands-on everything approach can cripple a growing business. In essence, over-reliance on a single founder can destroy a company, no matter how promising. As a result, seasoned investors and business scholars often avoid companies with heavy keyman risk. They know that a startup isn't truly viable if only the founder can make it work. The goal must be to build systems, a team that can carry the load. As Harvard Business Review notes, the majority of startups fail, but the smart ones learn to sidestep predictable pitfalls. Chief among them is founders' dysfunction. The solution, as painful as it is for some entrepreneurs, is to evolve their leadership style. Founders have to move from a hands-on hero-based model to a process-driven scalable model. In practice, this means documenting procedures, hiring competent managers, and trusting others to run the machine. It means the founder steps back from daily firefighting and focuses on high-level strategy and empowering the team. As one Forbes Business Council put it, keyman risk must be addressed head-on by implementing team redundancies and knowledge. In plainer terms, share the knowledge, delegate authority, and create a business that isn't held together by one person's sheer effort. Ultimately, the transition from a get-shit-done solo mentality to a system-based leadership model is what separates companies that plateau or implode from those that scale and thrive. Yes, grit and hustle are vital in early startup phase, but no company can grow on one person's shoulders alone. When a founder learns to let go and build a support structure, two things happen. The founder regains their sanity and work-life balance, and the business actually becomes more resilient. This sets the stage for the solution: implementing systems, processes, and delegation as the antidote to burnout and keyman risk. However, what happens when we don't delegate, build support structures, and share authority and decision making? 1. We sell the company. Ultimately, there is nothing wrong with selling the company. The problem is, what are the next steps? In most cases, people sell their companies and get back to same business, or at least a business model that is close to what they have been doing from scratch. Which absolutely has no sense, and the only explanation to this is the fact that the drive and passion for the business diminished to extinction, and hatred towards our own creations took over us, and instead of putting efforts to make things right, we let it go. Second pitfall is sabotage. What happens in this scenario? In this scenario, we don't sell the business, even when we should. Sometimes we can't accept defeat. Other times, we are just too emotionally invested to let it go. So we keep the business running on the surface, but deep down, we already given up. So what do? We begin making decisions not based on data or strategy, but purely on emotion. We stop planning, or we take too long to make a decision that the opportunity is gone by the time we act. All of this happens beneath the surface of our consciousness as we start to see our company as a burden, something that disrupts our life instead of giving us a purpose. And because we lack the courage to sell or shut it down, especially if it still has value, we subconsciously begin sabotaging it. We slowly destroy it because deep down it feels easier than confronting the hard truth. And when the company eventually fails, and it will, under these conditions, what will happen? We will rewrite the story. I would say it wasn't our fault, it was the economy, the competition, the COVID, the market change, our customers weren't ready. There is always a reason, believe me. But here's the truth, the failure wasn't due to outside forces. As a historian would say, a house wouldn't collapse unless from within. It happens because we refuse to take full responsibility for the state of our business. And because of that, we let go of its potential, we let it die quietly, so we wouldn't have to face the pain of acknowledging that it was our leadership that failed to evolve. The third deadly sin of entrepreneurship is stalling the process, which is the conscious decision not to grow. It usually happens when we are overwhelmed, when your managers are overwhelmed, and growth simply becomes exhausting. So make a conscious decision to stay where you are. But here's the dirty truth. A decision not to grow is a decision to slowly die. If you stall, you fall. And the reason behind this is quite simple. Marketplaces never stall. If you stall, it doesn't mean you are staying where you are, it means you are falling behind. That is the brutal but simple reality of evolving markets. If you don't improve your service-based product, someone else will. If you don't deliver faster, someone else will. If you don't provide better customer service, someone else will. If you don't upgrade your product's functionality, believe me, someone else will. And customers will always choose the better, faster, easier solution. When you stall, you fall behind, and eventually your company naturally dies. You need to internalize this. The world never stops. It either grows or it decays. There is no pause button in real life. So is in your company. So even a seemingly small decision to stall progress is, in reality, a decision to perish. And it's no different from battlefield. Imagine a group of soldiers moving forward. If one soldier stalls and falls behind, the group will wait the first time. That may even happen the second time out of loyalty, but the third time the group moves on and the stalled soldier is left alone. And according to brutal laws of survival that have governed humans for thousands of years, once you are alone, you are an easy prey. Even the best products and services have some churn rate. Even if you deliver an exceptional custom experience, you will lose a small percentage of customers over time. And if you are not growing, your cash flow will erode, slowly but surely. This doesn't only apply to your clients, it applies to your team as well. When you stall the company's growth, you also stall John's promotion. You also stall Melissa's opportunity to earn more. You cut off the natural career paths of your team members, and they surely deserve it. Without growth, there is no revenue. Without new revenue, there is no advancement. And talented A players or even high B players will eventually leave because their own growth will suffocate. With this said, a decision to stall is not just bad for your business survival, it's an act of betrayal to your team, to your customers, and to your core values, if you have them. Ultimately, there are two types of sins a business leader can commit: sins of action, which is doing something that is wrong, and sins of inaction, failing to act when action was required. And here's the hard truth: sins of inaction are often more dangerous than sins of action. You didn't move forward because maybe you were afraid, maybe you were tired, and maybe you were simply a cover towards your team, your customers, and people around you. But if you claim to have a mission, a purpose bigger than yourself, and you don't pursue it with your full energy, with your full heart, with your last breath, then in reality you are not truly committed to that mission at all. And if you started your business solely for cash flow, without deeper meaning, then I can tell you up front, this ideology, this channel, this journey we are building here won't speak to you. Because in this environment, only those with values and missions beyond cash flow can survive. Only they can endure the hardships that are guaranteed to come. But if you have a core ideology and core purpose, yet go and get one immediately. I will attach the link in the video. And when you do, stick to that ideology. Because if you have a core purpose and you betray it, it's far worse than never having one at all. Now that we have explored the emotional costs of misaligned businesses through selling, sabotage, or stalling, let's talk about the way forward. How do we move towards growth without burning out? How do we build businesses that elevate our lives but not consume them? The answer lies in systems. There's a powerful circle I've seen work all around the board called C.O.R.E. Imagine a circle which has 4 moving parts: cultivate, offload, refine, and expand. Every single task we do can fall into one of these 4 categories. The key is to learn how to place them correctly and then move through them in a way that gives us more time, more clarity, and better control. Because here's the hard truth: our time is finite, but the demands of business are infinite. If we don't install systems that support us, we will eventually become the bottlenecks. And when that happens, we pay the price. Not just in stress, but in something far deeper. We miss sunrises with our families. We skip the quiet moments in our backyard. We miss the voices of our kids growing up because we are constantly on calls, fixing fires, or chasing the next deal. That is not just bad for us, it's unfair to the people who depend on us. We made commitments when we became parents, spouses, or leaders, and those commitments require more than just providing income. They require presence. So, this isn't just a strategy to get your time back. This is about becoming a person your family deserves. It is about building a company that scales sustainably, where every mechanism has a fallback, and the architecture of your operations is so strong it won't collapse the moment you step away. Because a great company isn't just about sales, marketing, or delivery. It is about building something that can withstand stress without destroying the people inside. That is what it means to build like a growth architect. Now let me share a story. I was consulting with the founder of promising AI SaaS company, one of the first breaking outbound AI calling in the market. The product was solid, the founder was brilliant, technically he was ahead of the curve. We scheduled a call for 7 p.m. He didn't show up. I left my Zoom window open somehow, and an hour later he suddenly starts. He pops into the meeting as if nothing had happened. Now to be fair, he did message around 6:50 saying he would be 10-15 minutes late, but an hour? And when the call started, there was no apology, no acknowledgement, just straight into technical talk. And that moment told me everything. Like many founders, he was deeply technical. And there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's super great that the founder is technical. But he lacked operational structure. He had $1 million product, but not $1 million business. There was no system, no onboarding structure, no customer support flow. Nothing to protect the business from his own availability, which means everything relied on him. That is what we call keyman risk. And because of that, even though the product was amazing, it was obvious to me this business couldn't scale and deliver up to my expectations. He wasn't a business owner, he was an overworked technician. And the cracks were already showing. This is the exact kind of situation the core circle helps us avoid. Let's begin understanding of core circle with something we often forget. Success doesn't come from hustle alone. It comes from structure. And structure doesn't just belong to the business, it belongs to your life. The core circle isn't a tactic, it's a lens. A way to see your time, energy, and effort through a pattern that mirrors how we grow as founders and as humans. It is made of 4 points, 4 seasons, 4 stages we cycle back every time at every season of our time and we start again. Not just once, but over and over again as we and our company evolves. Here are them: cultivate, offload, refine, and expand. Each one of these contains within a challenge. And each one of these individually is not a breakthrough, but rather all of them combined are. Now let's explore each of them in depth. Cultivate. Or, as I love calling it, the season of becoming. This is where it all begins. Not just your business, but also your identity. You cultivate on this step everything in early motion, in your early life development, in your early business development, and there is a lot of deep work and unseen effort, and this is exactly the point where we talk about get shit done mentality that helps it scale. It is where you are doing everything: sales, marketing, product, fulfillment, admin work. But more than that, it is where you are becoming someone capable of carrying that weight. In this stage, your skills are being formed, your philosophy gets tested, your values are being revealed, not chosen. This is where you read relentlessly, where you fail publicly, and where you wake up with doubt, but you still keep moving. And it is also where professional growth is at its peak. You are building your first offer, making your first sale, handling your first breakthrough. But here's deeper truth: cultivate isn't just a phase, it's a rhythm you will return to every time you reach a new ceiling. Even after you have scaled, even after you have succeeded, every new season of growth requires new roots. The danger is staying here for too long, thinking that you just do more, you will break through. That's just an illusion. The breakthrough doesn't come from doing more, it comes when you learn to let go. And this is where I move to second stage, offload, or the season of release. At some point, all builders hit the wall. You have grown, you have learned, you have proven the model, but you also became the bottleneck. This is where most founders begin to stall, not because they lack vision, but because they are carrying too much. Offload is the stage of release, releasing control, releasing guilt, releasing the belief that only I can do this. And it is also about math. If your business brings $600K a year and you are keeping 40%, your time is worth roughly $120 an hour. Every time you answer email, book appointments, build landing pages, or rework a client report, things that could be handled for $15 to $30, you are leaking value. Not theoretical value, but real, measurable value. But more importantly, you are leaking focus. Offload is not about outsourcing everything. It's about protecting your energy for what only you can do. In this stage, you leave all tasks that are below your pay grade to those who can handle it, and most of the time if they are trained over time, they handle it far better than you, and you concentrate what you do the best. If it's technical aspect, technical. If it's sales, it's sales. And this stage is hard. You will worry no one can do it like you, and you're right, they can't. At first they will only operate 60 to 80% of your output, but that's not failure. That's great result, and that's freedom, because your job isn't to do everything perfectly. It's to build a machine that works when you step out. When done well, offloading doesn't just buy back time, it buys back your identity. You are no longer just a doer, you are becoming an architect of your life and an architect of your business. Once you do this, next stage is refine, which I call the season of precision. Once you have clear space, it's time to refine. This is where the work becomes intelligence, quiet, subtle, and deep. Refine is where systems are born, where you stop improvising and start building something that can scale without chaos. You start asking better questions. Where is energy of me and my team leaking in our processes? Where is the actual bottleneck in our client journey? And what communication gaps are costing us trust or time? And you write SOPs, you optimize onboarding, you remove steps from your offer that don't matter, and double down on the ones that do. This is also where leadership begins to mature. You are no longer just hire people to take tasks. You build environments that create clarity, autonomy, and accountability. You start making decisions in real time and start designing decisions frameworks that others can follow. And inside your own life, you begin refining how you think, your habits. You no longer chase dopamine, you protect the flow. Refinement is where things begin to work quietly because you have removed the noise. And from that quiet comes the next season. Expand, which is the season of overflow. Most entrepreneurs chase this one first. They say they want freedom, but expansion without cultivation leads to collapse. An expansion without offloading leads to burnout. An expansion without refinement leads to chaos. True expansion is not about doing more, it's about becoming more present. This is where you step back, not to escape, but to reconnect. You connect with your spouse. You take your kids to the park in the middle of the day. You go to bed early and wake up not to hustle, but to think. You read books that fill your soul, not just your strategy. You journal without trying to create content. You stop multitasking and start witnessing. And here's the magic. When you inspect with intention, you multiply your clarity. This is where vision sharpens. This is where the next idea shows up, not because you forced it, but because you made the room for it. Expansion isn't optional. It's where longevity lies. A business that doesn't create space for life will take your life. But when you get it right, when you truly expand, you become the kind of person who builds from peace, not pressure. And from that peace, you don't just scale a business, you build a legacy. With this said, C.O.R.E model is not linear, it's a circle, it's a rhythm. You move through it again and again. You reach from stage 1 to stage 4, new idea, and you are back to stage 1 and your business evolves. Every time you hit a ceiling, personally or professionally, you return to cultivate. You offload more, you refine more deeply, you expand more intentionally. And this is the rhythm of builders who don't burn out, who don't plateau, who don't forget their families in the pursuit of numbers. You don't need to chase the world. You need to build a system that lets you live, grow, and lead on purpose. This is the core circle. So, take your time, find your space in the circle, and align with your actions. And become the kind of founder who builds with passion and peace. Because the point was never just to grow fast, the point was to grow well. With this said, I will make new content. of how to build your SOP, how to encourage your team, which is part of actions that lie within 4 stages of core circle. And we are going to go deeper into how to build these SOPs, how structure this, but also how and when to do each step in a way that supports your team and doesn't break their spirit. So with this said, let's incorporate core circle in your life and business, take your time, and be blessed, because if you watch this, then you truly care. And if you care for building something that gives far more value to the world and people around you. So let's work together and let's win together. Be in peace.